His lips quivered, his eyes trying to take in the scene. He tried to focus his vision, but the darkness was too dense. "What?" he managed to let out. The other person didn't respond. A hand on his back led him gently somewhere, and he was too shocked to resist. His eyes hadn't yet quite adjusted to the complete blackness to see properly. But he knew he was going to the kitchen. His foot hit something that looked like an upside-down sofa, and he was guided around it. Quote. Hands on his shoulder pushed him down, and he found a chair underneath him. His mind still reeling, he tried again. "Why?" A soft voice responded. "You're gonna have to be more specific." "Whew." His tongue felt numb. His whole mouth did. Maybe everything did. "Why? Did you do that?" Hid, his voice coarse and no louder than a whisper. He heard a sigh from somewhere in front of him. Over the dining table, a person was walking away, their broad shoulders visibly heaving. "I was hoping you knew. Or at least, that you'd understand." He knew that voice. Or at least, he thought so. Right now, he wasn't sure he knew his own name. He saw a shadow move against the single candle flickering at the corner of the table, just shy of 2 inches long, held by a small saucer. Well, he heard something cracking and crinkling under the other person's weight, like glass. You know how it is. Things happen sometimes. Life has a way of fucking you up like that, the stranger said from the living room, with something akin to hatred dripping from his words. No, that wasn't a stranger. He was right. He knew that voice. I mean, you weren't meant to be here, not today. As the flame swayed from side to side while the wax evaporated away, he saw hints of movement that seemed to be going toward him, several small cracks with each step. His panicked eyes darted around, finding a broken portrait on the wall that showed a family picture. His mind starting to get a little clearer, he hoped his wife wasn't home, hoped she was okay. "How would you know where I'm supposed to be? Why would you do that?" He remembered seeing something strewn on the floor as he came in. Maybe deep down he could feel what it was. Tears started to roll down his cheeks, though he wasn't quite sure why. Quote, the candle got smaller. Quote, the voice drew closer. Something was carrying something. Something he thought he wouldn't like to see. So naturally he shut his eyes. Okay. A loud but deep thud reverberated across the room, and the table shook under the weight. The light trembled, but didn't disappear. His eyes started to open just slightly, and he saw red hair. Now he was sure he didn't want to see that. Let's just say you've always been a very predictable man. You almost never have a reason to go out of your routines. You're supposed to be at work right now. The voice seemed to distance itself, and he could feel the slight warmth of the fire reaching his cold and damp skin, and a spot of orange sneak past his eyelids. No, the flame was too small and far for him to feel that. The heat emanated from something else. Someone else. The rhythmic crunching inched closer, announcing the other one's arrival. I really wish you weren't here today. This wasn't meant for you. She's the one who left me there. A drop of viscous liquid fell on his hands. And then another. He heard sloshing as the person walked, and then splashing coming from his left. The bedroom. Then behind him. The smell reached him, and he kind of enjoyed it. Before. She didn't like it, and always teased him for his guilty pleasure. But he didn't like it now. She's the one who made all this happen. She's the one who had it coming, not you. Now he knew from where he knew the voice. It sounded a bit like Caleb, but it was deeper, and it obviously couldn't be him. He was away, had been for years, and would still be for years to come, until he became an adult, which would be how many years from now? He couldn't really think. He never liked to think about him. It hurt too much to remember his poor sweet baby. Now the semi-stranger came closer and very carefully poured something on him, something wet and warm but more fluid than what was falling on him before. The smell became overpowering. Quote, but to be fair, you did let her. And they do say that the more, the merrier. He felt the light change through his tensed eyelids, like it moved places. We don't want to spoil the surprise, now do we? We've got a show to run here. Boo! More splashing right in front of him, that now hit him on his face as small droplets, accompanied by a deranged chuckle. A drop rolled against his eyelid and wrestled its way inside, and it burned. He closed his eyes even more strongly against the pain. Whew! But anyway, enough talking. I've already waited long enough for this day to come. I've had years in that fucking hellhole. The back of his eyelids got progressively darker, and the sounds of moist crackles went further and further. He heard a door open, and mustered all the courage he could to open his burning eyes. He saw the sand-colored hair, the same shade as his, framing the familiar features, but now in a tall man. In his hands, he and the fragile flame shuddered in unison. Caleb always did look like his mother. The woman he loved the most. Quote, the woman right in front of him, drenched as he was. His boy stood outside the door, the flame trembling in his hand, his eyes meeting his father's with something that almost looked like warmth. He heard the not stranger say, "Bye, Dad," and then the china shattered, just before the door was closed. Not one moment later, the tiny candle gave its life for the roaring flames that erupted, following their given path. He wondered if the little light had known all along the end was coming. Quote, he lowered his head in acceptance. At least he'd die next to her. She was difficult, and she could be cold, but he loved her. The violet light was all around him now, moving greedily, racing up the curtains, destroying the carpet, devouring the wallpapers and the broken picture frame. Little Caleb melted alongside his younger parents, their faces curling and blackening as all the memories burned. The smoke entered his lungs, as heavy as he felt when she told him, "Baby, you can't help him." Maybe she was just scared of him, like he was now. Even on that day, somehow he still loved her. Maybe because she was right. Or maybe that day she lit the match. As the inferno followed, inched closer, and his skin blistered, he could only feel regret. "I'm sorry, kiddo,"